Now, the Justice Secretary, Angela Constance, says it's extremely disappointing that a law to quash convictions of sub-postmasters caught up in the Horizon IT scandal won't apply in Scotland. The Westminster legislation will exonerate those convicted in England and Wales. And this is what the Prime Minister, Richi Sunak, had to say about it earlier in the Commons.
Mr. Speaker, the Post Office IT scandal is one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in our nation's history, and I'm determined that the victims get the justice and redress that they deserve. Today, we're introducing legislation to quash convictions resulting from this scandal. The Department for Business and Trade will be responsible for the new redress scheme, and we're widening access to the optional £75,000 payment. Hundreds of innocent sub-postmasters have fought long and hard for justice. With this bill, we will deliver it.
Well, Ms Constance says Holyrood will introduce Scottish legislation that delivers justice for all those affected. Around 100 post office sub-postmasters in Scotland were among those convicted after being wrongly accused of embezzling money. Well, Tommy Ross KC joins me now. So, first of all, then, what do you make of this scheme and the fact that Scotland is not included?
Well, these are convictions which were recorded in Scotland, and justice was devolved to Scotland as a result of the devolution settlement. So it always seemed to be strange that it was proposed that this is something that Westminster should have sorted out. So I thought at the time it was the simplest thing in the world for the Scottish Government to introduce legislation to quash 100 convictions in circumstances where there isn't a single person in the country who would oppose the legislation.
Given, though, that it is a UK-wide issue and the Post Office is owned by the UK government, would it not have been more efficient just to do it all together? I mean, what's different in Scotland?
Well, apparently it wouldn't be more efficient, because it seems that having made a promise to the postmasters at the beginning of January, the First Minister said that there would be legislation. And as far as I can tell, in the 2 months that have passed since, they've done nothing other than to ask the UK government. And while the UK government have been busy drafting legislation, which seems to be fairly detailed and advanced if they're about to announce it, as far as I know, the Scottish Government hasn't done anything at all.
Would it have been your expectation that even in case it wasn't covered by the UK scheme, the Scottish Government would have a plan ready to go?
Well, 100%. I mean, if I'm given a duty to perform in relation to court and they give me 4 weeks to do it, and I give it to somebody else to do and then find out the day before they haven't done it, the only one person's going to blame for that, and that's me. I mean, they seem to just have asked the UK government, taking no steps until last week to see what the proposal is, and now they're going to have to start all over again 2 months down the line.
Is there any reason, though, Westminster couldn't have included Scotland?
Well, it seems to me odd, given that justice has been devolved as a result of the devolution settlement. It always seems strange to me that the Scottish Government wanted Westminster to intervene. I thought the purpose of the Scotland Act and the devolution settlement was that Scotland would be responsible for taking their own decisions in relation to justice, not waiting to see what government in London allowed them to do. It seems strange to me that the SNP thought this was the appropriate way to go about it. It still seems strange, but ultimately they've done nothing in 2 months when they could have been busy drafting legislation.
How quickly now do you think the Scottish Government could have a scheme in place?
Well, by comparison, COVID struck round about the 20th of March 2020, and by the 6th of April there was a very detailed bill which I think had around 200 provisions. And of course, that was unopposed by the opposition parties, as this would be. So, to quash 100 convictions, it shouldn't be beyond people to draft a bill and get it into Parliament within a fortnight. That doesn't seem, that doesn't seem an impossible timescale to achieve when they could legislate for every aspect of a pandemic within about 2 weeks.
Meanwhile, only 6 people in Scotland have had their convictions overturned. It does seem to have been an extremely slow process here.
It seems to be, and I should say that the Lord Advocate, who I respect greatly, isn't apparently in favour of a blanket quashing of convictions. Her preferred course would be to judge each conviction individually, and I don't know whether that's a factor in the situation that we find ourselves in, where nothing appears to have been done in 2 months. But if it is, the better sort it out if they're to retain any credibility when they say that they're committed. I mean, it was described by Richi Sunak as the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history, and in 2 months it looks as if the Scottish Government done nothing.
Do you actually think there's a real possibility Scotland might have a different scheme doing the cases on a case-to-case basis?
I don't know, because the Lord Advocate is a member of the Scottish Executive, which we always refer to as the Scottish Cabinet. So she would be in favour, as I read her comments in Parliament, of each case being judged individually. The Justice Minister has said that she's in favour of legislation, even though she seems to have done nothing about it. She's in favour of legislation which has the effect of quashing the convictions. So the Lord Advocate and the Justice Minister, both part of the same Scottish Executive, seem to have polar opposite views as to how this is to be sorted out. And 2 months into the situation, we're none the wiser as to whether the Lord Advocate is to prevail or the Justice Ministers prevail. It really seems pretty unsatisfactory.
Well, we did ask the Justice Secretary, Angela Constance, onto the programme today, but she wasn't available. But Tommy Ross, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Now, the European Parliament has approved the world's